Hello, and welcome to Off the Field and Screens, the Detroit Way, a Detroit sports podcast. I'm your host, Chad Marriott, and we're recording a little later this week because I wanted to wait for a lot of things that were going on. The NHL had the Olympic roster freeze yesterday. The NBA had the trade deadline today. Tarek Skubal's arbitration hearing was yesterday, and the news came out today, and the Tigers made another surprising move ahead of spring training. But let's go ahead and get into the more controversial aspect, which was the Pistons did make a trade earlier in the week. They sent Jaden Ivey out to Chicago as a part of a 3-team deal. I'm just going to go into the aspects that affect the Pistons on this trade. They added Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric, and they did a first-round protected pick swap with the Timberwolves. And there's some people that think this is a great trade, which I think they're in part of the minority. There's people that think it's an awful trade, also part of the minority. The biggest consensus I've got from a lot of the evaluators is that this is an okay trade. But there are some in the Pistons media or the Pistons podcastosphere trying to spin it as a great deal. First of all, the immediate, I don't know how else to put it than slander of Jaden Ivey. I know he's not had great numbers. He hasn't played a lot this year. He's coming off an injury. He's still 23 years old, and I still believe he has the capability of being a really good basketball player. I think all the evidence is there for that. With an opportunity in Chicago, and wherever he goes after that this summer, I think that's entirely possible that he ends up becoming the player that a lot of people envisioned when the Pistons took him 5th overall. In that swap, the Pistons got Kevin Huerter, and there's a lot of sharpshooter talk right away because he's a career 37% shooter. I want to just confirm these numbers while we're on the subject. Kevin Huerter. And I want to go through and break this down bit by bit. So this is the thing the Pistons did, and I've been an advocate that that's one of the things, if they're going to do anything, get some three-point shooting at the deadline. He is, a career 37%. But in the last 2 seasons, this year, he's been shooting 31%. This year he's been shooting 31%. Last year he shot 33.8%. And then the year before that he shot 36%. So over that span, the last 3 seasons, he's shooting 34%. Okay? So he's in a prolonged shooting slump over multiple seasons. And the counter argument, you're seeing a lot of people that like this trade, they're saying, well, his career, the first 5 seasons of his career, he was shooting really, really well. He's a career 37% shooter, so that means he's going to be good. So over those first 5 seasons, he shot 38%, and that goes back, to 2023. And it's the argument is, well, he was good. On the Pistons, he's going to get more open shots, so therefore he's going to revert to some of those older numbers. He's a good shooter at heart. We just know that he's going to change. And I think the problem with that, relying on that, and this remains to be seen, but I remain skeptical of guys having prolonged shooting slumps like this over multiple seasons and coming out of it just because of a change of scenery. A perfect example of the logical error in that, too, I want to turn to some baseball stats. Miguel Cabrera, in his career, had a career average of .306 at the plate. In his last 4 seasons in Detroit, he had a .255 batting average. So that would be like saying this Kevin Huerter argument that when they added Javi Baez, even though he was hitting 250 over those last couple of years, he's going to revert back because he's a 306 career hitter, 4 years ago. And my point with kind of explaining that all out there is that I just don't think that it happens that way. It doesn't work that way. You don't just say, well, now I'm going to start hitting my shots again, because when you're in a slump like that, and it could be basketball with shooting, it could be scoring in hockey, it could be getting hits in baseball, whatever, right? It's more psychological than it is skills. And I don't think that suddenly now, with the added pressure of being on a good team, I think people are overlooking that. They're like, oh, on a good team, he'll get more open shots. No, on a good team, he's going to get every team's best shot. And they're going to think, that's the shooter out here, don't let him get open. If teams even consider him like that anymore. But we'll see. That's ultimately what that comes down to, is we're just going to have to see. For some context on that shooting number, that this improves the Pistons via shooting. One moment. This is going to improve the Pistons, outside shooting. Jaden Ivey shot 40% last year and was shooting 37% this year from the three-point line. So technically, just on that one metric, they got worse. They're like, oh, over his whole career, he's a 37 and Jaden Ivey's a 35. Yeah, that's years ago now. Maybe it happens. I'm hoping it happens because it would really help the Pistons, and I want that to happen. I am very skeptical. Now, for the people on Ivey was unhappy with his limited role in his minutes, and he was going to hurt the team with that, and he wanted out. We don't know that. And I've had people say to me, oh, well, every reporter that has access to the locker room is saying that. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anybody from the Free Press, from the News, from the Athletic. Nobody's reporting that. It's just a bunch of random Facebook accounts and random podcasters reporting stuff like it's news. Now, you might say, Chad, you're just a random podcaster. But I don't report things like they're breaking news when I have no source to say that. And furthermore, anybody that says, well, somebody told me in the locker room, who told you that? If they're not willing to go on the record for stuff like this, then you can't treat it as a fact. It's not a fact until the person comes out, like say Bickerstaff, JB Bickerstaff, or Trajan Lang did come out and say, Jaden Ivey was unhappy. So we had to make a move. And this move got us some three-point shooting, we feel. Okay, fine. If that happens, I will believe that. Until there is verified reporting of something like that, you cannot factor it in. You have to go on player to player. Now, I understand that they might have felt they can't re-sign Ivey at the end of the season. But here's my big problem with this trade. Today, it came out that the Lakers acquired Luke Kennard for Gabe Vincent. Now, J.I. is averaging 8.2 on 37% from the three-point line. Let's take a look at the year that Gabe Vincent is having. And J.I. is 23 years old. And this guy, Gabe Vincent, is 29. And he is shooting 37%, right around the same, and averaging 4.8 points per game. And the Lakers traded him and a second-round pick for Luke Kennard, who is also 29 years old, and is shooting 49.7% from the three-point line, averaging 7.9 points per game. But, okay, whatever. Say what you want. You're telling me the Pistons couldn't get that deal? That they weren't able to negotiate a deal to get Luke Kennard instead of Kevin Huerter? Somebody that... When is the last time Kennard shot under 40%? Was his last year in Detroit. The last time he shot under 40% from the three-point line was in 2020. Over this same span that we were talking about, Kevin Huerter shooting 34%, in that same time span, Kennard has shot 46.5%. I think the Pistons must not have known, or maybe they're not interested in Kennard. Maybe they think like his defense isn't that great, and that this Kevin Huerter at least plays better defense. I don't know. I'm telling you right now, for what they gave up, they should have been aiming for something like this. That's my opinion. We'll see how Kevin Huerter works out. The other aspect of this trade that people are going on and on and on and on about is, we got a pick swap. We can move up 9 picks in the draft. Yeah, from 29 to 20 is not that great of a valuation. I think people are really massively overvaluing that pick swap. Particularly if Minnesota falls off, we don't get it this year, or I think more than likely Minnesota's about to take off, and I think they're going to jump up, and this is going to be more like a moving from 29 to 26. That's ultimately what it could be, and that's irrelevant. You can move from 29 to 26 for just a second round pick. I don't know. So based on the court, things that we know, this is a bad trade. Based on, it's understandable to trade Ivey, feeling like, you might not be able to re-sign him. You want to get something for him. They got 2 guys that are on expiring contracts that have had their kind of worst years of their career over the last 2 seasons. It's a prolonged slump, a prolonged decline. So I don't see it. It doesn't make sense. I'm very skeptical. I'm hopeful that Kevin Huerter works out and fills that role, kind of the 9th, 10th guy in the rotation, and can knock down some open shots. I would not hold your breath if you think that's going to happen. Just because he's getting more open shots doesn't magically change that he's going to shoot. And I don't even know where everybody got the idea that all the shots, he's just getting smothered everywhere since the last 2 years. They're just all over Kevin Huerter. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. And then also, I wrote this earlier, that Jalen Duren, that was one of the things I want to talk about, is an all-star. Very deserving. I've been in that camp all season. And for all of you that are excited about the Ivy trade, this is how you talked about Jalen Duren this summer. Just so you know. There are the receipts, all these beat reporters, all these podcasters, they're like, he sucks, he can't play defense, he's not this, they should trade him for Brook. People wanted Brook Lopez. They were like, we need a 3-point shooter. So if Ivy ends up having a similar, recovering from this injury and has a similar resurgence next season, this trade is going to look really, really bad. That's why in the article, and you can see all these arguments broken down in more detail on the website, offthefieldandScreen.com, that this whole thing is just a gamble. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But we're going to find out. Let's turn to the Tigers. Tarek Skubal, they had the arbitration hearing, and Skubal's side won. It was record-setting for the amount and the the total amount for a pitcher, and the amount that was separating. It was like the biggest ruling ever in a single-year contract. I sort of get it. That's the way it went down. The implications of this are, one, the Tigers have Skubal this year, and he is deserving of a bigger contract. That's for sure. But long-term, the arbitration process now, this is unprecedented, giving this big of a win to a player over a team. And it'll be interesting to see how that affects things going forward in these arbitration cases. Ultimately, I know some people don't want to hear this. The baseball needs a salary cap. It's ridiculous. Let's just get a salary cap, and then we can get reasonable league-wide valuation on players, pound for pound across the different positions and everything. This completely open market where there are a few teams that have unending pockets and then most of the teams have to try and do something like this where they're trying to scrounge up to keep a superstar. It's not right. Baseball would be really cool if they could add something like the NBA where your homegrown talent can make more money if they stay with the team that drafted them, that brought them up through the system, right? That would be something awesome that baseball could do to try and combat this problem, maybe even without a salary cap. Do something to help these players stay. I guess the problem is you'd have to have the salary cap to effectuate that. So, all right. And then the Tigers also went out and made a surprise move, adding Framber Valdez. A very solid addition. He got the big contract. And some people are being stupid saying, well, he got this big contract and the Tigers wanted to shortchange Skubal and not give him what he's worth. That's a totally different process. Being on the open market and being in an arbitration process are totally different. And the way that teams have to approach those are totally different. Saying that when the arbitration process gives the Tigers a little bit of an advantage, saying that they should just say, oh no, we'll just do whatever the player wants, is bad management. And I'm all for them being able to extend, and I wish that he would be interested in extending, but his agent, Scott Boras, is very well known for guys hitting the open market. He got as much as he could out of this arbitration process, and he'll do the same thing when he hits the open market. And players get more money when they hit the open market than they do not testing free agency. But this Valdez move kind of signifies that the Tigers are trying to win it this year. And one of the big reactions I saw from some people is that, why didn't they get a bat? Why aren't they adding more bats? Why are they adding more pitching? Well, I know that the team went into a slump last year, a team-wide slump. One bat was not going to fix that. And I have been pretty consistent on that belief. That baseball, you need multiple guys hitting well. And going into a giant slump like that across the board, it just wasn't doable. However, when they had Reese Olson and Jackson Jobe went down with injuries, and in season they had to make a quick change to try and improve the pitching, or try and at least get some starting pitching in there, and they added Chris Paddock and Charlie Morton, and no offense to those guys, that was a complete and total disaster. It was just a disaster. So this offseason you get Valdez, and you have Skubal, you have him, you have maybe Flaherty's going to bounce back, you have the best version of Casey Mize we've seen, you have Reese Olson coming back from an injury, and then depth-wise you still have Troy Melton and Cater Montero, and they also signed Drew Anderson. Suddenly, in season, if there are injuries, they're not going to have to scramble to add more starting pitching because they're going to have the depth there, and they have really solid rotation. And you can win a lot of games like this, pitching well. And the bullpen looks pretty solid with the addition of Kenley Jansen. Suddenly, the Tigers' pitching looks like very, very good. Now, they're saying, oh, the hitting. What about the hitting? I think two things on this. I believe that they think that slump was probably not who this team really is. I don't think you're going to see a team-wide slump like that. Are you going to see the first half where they looked unstoppable? Probably not. You're probably going to find somewhere in between. You're going to have a few guys like a Dylan Dingler and a Colt Keith break out. But say they're in this thing going down towards the trade deadline, but they need a little bit more. It's going to be easier to add some help at the plate than it is to add efficient pitching, to add good pitching, as was shown, I think, at last year's deadline. Like, the pitching market was not great. And the cost for anybody that was even moving the needle was really, really high. But for batters, for getting a couple bats in there, I think it's totally possible that if they have that need towards the deadline, they're going to be able to fill that a lot more easily and a lot more knowledgeably than they would replacing any pitching problems at that time. This year, I think kind of committing to that rotation, committing to that pitching depth is going to allow them to have flexibility to focus on that on the offensive side if that becomes a need, if some of these guys don't have the years that they're hoping for. And, this is a talking point that they use. It's another gamble. I'm going to be consistent. The Pistons made a gamble. The Tigers are making a gamble that they're going to have somebody like how Dylan Dingler broke out, or how Zach McKinstry had a great year, or how Spencer Torkelson looked like he was on the outs and ended up being, pretty good first baseman for them this year. That they're probably counting on somebody that we're not thinking about having a good camp, coming onto the team, developing, and becoming like a really solid player like that. We don't know. That's a gamble. And you can criticize that if you don't feel comfortable with them gambling on, the offense like that. But I feel like it's a safer bet to gamble on the offense than it is on the rotation. Especially, I don't know about you guys. Watching Morton and Paddock pitch last year, it was just, you could just scratch in an L because they would give up 3-4 runs in the first inning, and we'd be down 6-1 by the end of the second. Every time they're trying to claw back into the game, and I can't help but wonder if the pitching struggles led to the hitting struggles because they didn't feel like, we can just work the counts and get our pitch. We have to swing, we have to hit a home run, we have to get back in the game, and then suddenly the approach is off. Yeah, so that's about it on the Tigers. There was one other thing I heard earlier. This is what I was trying to say. I hadn't thought of this, but I saw it pointed out that adding another left-handed ace to this pitching rotation is very focused on Cleveland, who has a very left-handed bat-heavy lineup, and is probably not going to have as much fun playing the Tigers if they have to go Skubal and Valdez in the same, series. That was a really good catch. All right, so let's turn to wrap this up with the Red Wings heading into the Olympic break. They really, really struggled in the last little bit here. Let's look. Yeah, in January, if we wanted to look, they started January, they beat, the 21st, the 22nd of January. They had an overtime loss, they won, a loss, an overtime loss, a win, a loss. So, it's 3 straight, even though losses in that stretch at one point, even though one of them was a shootout loss, and they were very lucky to even get that with some craziness on that DeBrincat shot. But they've not looked as strong, they've not looked as efficient. Some of the old habits are coming back in. It does not help that Simon Edvinsson is hurt. That has really shown how their defensemen, they don't have a lot of depth there. And I was thinking they needed to add a defenseman before Edvinsson got hurt, and now I'm like, this is the best argument for it. They're going to need it if they want to make the playoffs, and they're in a good position. Best position they've been in a long time to make the playoffs. But they're going to have to clean some things up to end the season. I was hoping that maybe they could, maybe they would think about adding somebody before the break. But I know that Steve Yzerman is very focused on adding players with term and not adding rentals. And then you can't help that somebody like Panarin does not wanted to only go to Los Angeles. He wasn't interested in Detroit. And it's kind of crazy that that's just become a thing for the Red Wings, that nobody wants to come here. DeBrincat did and Kane did, but it's the majority don't want to be here. don't want to not be here, but don't want to come to Detroit. They can't get another star player, another game changer to come here. I don't know what that's about. It didn't used to be that way in Hockey Town. It used to be a destination, and I think if you want to criticize, Illich for anything, it's like, why isn't Detroit a destination for top hockey talent? Why aren't guys lining up to try and get here, taking deals to try and get here? Team-friendly deals to get here. What is going on that the Red Wings can't? They're not a destination. Like the Tigers are a little bit. Money makes a difference there, but you're seeing them be able to get players that want to come here. And there's conversation among the players that this is a great place to play. You love playing for Hinch and all that. Even in the minor leagues, they're talking about, oh, it's so great to play for the Tigers because even if you're not like a top prospect, they still build a program for you to try and improve your game. You're not just overlooked. So I don't know. I really don't. I don't know what they need to do there, but that's definitely, I think, the big storyline going forward. Hopefully over the Olympic break, they can all get healthy, get well rested, and get really ready for this final push. I'm hoping Dylan Larkin playing in the Olympics really gets him going because he's not been the best version of Dylan Larkin for the majority of this season. He started out really strong and then he struggled a little bit, and then he'll have a couple good games and then struggle. So I don't know. The same thing, got to hope that Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond stay healthy through the Olympics. Same with Larkin. And really, that's all that I have for this week. It's very exciting that the Tigers are around the corner. Going to miss watching the Red Wings. And we're going to see how this works out with the Pistons. And then after the Super Bowl, the Lions offseason will start to focus in more on that. And this has been the Detroit Way. If you enjoyed this, please follow, continue listening, subscribe. We have a YouTube channel. Check out offthefieldandScreen.com. We post full-length articles there. All right. Thank you.